Life. What a beautiful choice.
Cheers to Sammy for dating a mother and her daughter.
Wow.
From ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Good evening. Tonight, the cover-up. We continue the story of a young Navy lieutenant who was sexually attacked by her fellow officers at a Navy Flyers convention in Las Vegas last September, who went public with her story only yesterday.
I went down a hallway where every man in that hallway got a shot at me. Made sure that I did not pass untouched.
Lieutenant Paula Coughlin decided to tell her story to us because she was so frustrated that the men who attacked her have not been brought to justice. This in a Navy which proudly proclaims it has zero tolerance for sexual harassment.
Immediately after this attack, I was furious. I was angry. I wanted to catch those guys.
Lieutenant Coughlin got even angrier as time went by because she could not get her boss, Admiral John Snyder, to take her seriously. She says she told her boss what happened to her on the morning after she was attacked.
He didn't respond exactly the way I expected him to, and I wasn't satisfied with the answer. I accepted it at that meeting. He told me that's what you get. You shouldn't have been in that hallway full of drunk aviators.
3 weeks later, when her boss had done nothing, Lieutenant Coughlin decided she had to go higher. She wrote to the Deputy Chief of Naval Operations, Admiral Richard Dunleavy.
I'm kind of losing my mind in little pieces, waiting for someone to say, that was wrong and we're going to make it right.
An investigation was finally begun. But 1,500 interviews later, the Navy's Inspector General reported that his investigators were being stonewalled. A great wall of silence had gone up to protect the guilty.
The refusal to cooperate, the refusal to answer questions, the refusal to basically fully and completely explain whatever one may have observed is another whole feature of this case. That's unacceptable for Navy personnel, Navy officers.
In their report, 7 months after the women were attacked, Navy investigators wrote, "There is still little understanding of the nature, severity, and number of assaults which occurred. A common thread," they wrote, "running through the overwhelming number of interviews regarding the Tailhook Convention was, what's the big deal? How is it that local Navy and Marine commanders cannot get the ones who were guilty to come forward?"
Military officers have every obligation to completely cooperate with any investigation by legitimate law enforcement, particularly their own internal Navy investigators.
And what of the Navy Secretary, Lawrence Garrett? He was at the Tailhook Convention. He was actually on a patio near the third-floor corridor in which the women were abused. Garrett says he didn't know anything was going on until 3 weeks later.
I don't know of a parent in America that would buy that story from their child, so I would hope a taxpayer doesn't buy that story from their Secretary of the Navy.
Secretary Garrett will not answer our questions, and his personal aide, Lieutenant Trusty Steed, the man who comforted Lieutenant Coughlin after the attack, will not comment. But did Steed and his boss never discuss this? Lieutenant Coughlin will say only this.
I can't even speculate on the relationship that he had between his boss. And I didn't ask him.
The best the Navy has been able to do is piece together a rough account that implicates more than 70 officers in either the attack on the women or the subsequent attempts to cover it up.
Come to order.
Senator Nunn and Senator John Warner of the Senate Armed Services Committee are so aggravated that they have frozen all Navy and Marine Corps promotions until the Navy provides a list of those involved in the Tailhook scandal. Which brings us back to Lieutenant Coughlin. She sees it from the inside. Does she think that the men who attacked 26 women will be brought to justice?
I think there'll be justice.
You're 100% certain there'll be justice?
Yes.
Lieutenant Coughlin has changed her mind since that answer 2 days ago. The reality, she says today, is that too much time has gone by, too much integrity has gone over the side. If she is right, and the Pentagon now fails to identify the men who attacked her and the other women, the cover-up will have been successful. There'll be more about all this later tonight on Primetime Live. Sexual harassment in civilian jobs was the focus of a hearing on Capitol Hill today. We'll have that story in a moment. And later in the broadcast, business is already feeling the impact of the rail strike, even as Congress moves in the direction of ending it. And a report on the weirdest part-time job we've ever known a college student to have.
This is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings. Brought to you by Ford and your Ford dealer.
Ask anyone who's driven a Ford lately. Like the people from Car and Driver, who've named Taurus SHO one of their 10 best. The people from Motor Trend, who named Explorer the best buy in its class. Or any one of the thousands of people who've made Escort the best-selling small car in America. Have you driven a Ford lately? It's more than just a question. It's an answer.
Your rugged routine, day after day. It's even harder when athlete's foot routinely comes back. Get prescription strength Lotrimin AF. It kills all causes of athlete's foot. Lotrimin AF, the finish line for athlete's foot.
Recycling's easy if you got the right stuff and you know what to do. So don't make a mess. Just ask Ace.
Ace Harmony trash bags are just $1.97, and Ace siliconized acrylic caulk is 88 cents a tube.
Ace Best Buy is another reason Ace is a place for you. There were more revelations about sexual harassment today regarding women who are abused in the civilian workforce. A congressional panel heard testimony from women who work in jobs that have traditionally been occupied by men. Here's ABC's Bill Greenwood.
Dawn Mundy is a garbage truck driver from Glen Burnie, Maryland. She's licensed to handle anything on the road. So when the Waste Management Corporation had an opening 4 years ago, it was hard to turn her down. But the woman says superiors have been giving her a hard time since day one.
My situation was just a completely unequal situation as far as pay, treatment, humiliating treatment.
Her boss forced her to go into the men's room to pick up her truck keys and daily assignment.
There were situations where I have walked in on the co-workers using the urinals. It's not only humiliating for me as a female, I mean, I'm just going in to pick up my paperwork, but it's humiliating for them too.
She was fired by Waste Management in 1989 after refusing to handle a load of elephant manure, since there was no protective equipment. She was reinstated after complaining to a county human rights commission.
Until you're actually a victim.
Today, Dawn Mundy complained to Congress, and women on the subcommittee were not surprised.
You don't have to really talk to too many women to realize the kinds of hardships that they face, particularly at the workplace. Men just don't get it. They just don't understand it.
Congress was told the problem is not limited to blue-collar workers. A doctor told of being forced out of the National Institutes of Health after refusing to sleep with her boss. And a former professor from Berkeley said sex bias is the reason 10 of the nation's top college math departments have only 2 women professors whose jobs are protected for life. Bill Greenwood, ABC News, Washington.
Day 2 of the railroad strike in Washington. A plan to end it is working its way through Congress. The proposal would send everyone back to work for at least 35 days. Then there would be binding arbitration if the parties still had not reached an agreement on their own. For passengers, the strike has been mostly an inconvenience. For business, something quite different. Here's ABC's Tom Foreman.
With no way to move their products, timber companies are cutting back production. With no way to get new stock, lumber yards are afraid they will run out of supplies for home builders.
This is the last stuff we got on Tuesday. There's nothing really we can do. Once the supply runs out and it's all sitting, on track somewhere in town or out of town, there's not much you can do.
Fruit growers worry if the strike goes on much longer, some of their perishable crops will perish. Not worth spending the money on picking.
There is a chance that if it continues like this, fruit won't be picked. It'll be left on the tree to rot. It'll rot in the field.
Even Coors Beer is trying to figure out how to move its brew. 75% of what it makes ships out by rail.
We've got that Hunter pickup.
About the only place business is booming is at trucking companies. Former rail users are calling for help, often with little luck.
I had a whole page of loads offered today out of Denver, and I can't cover any of them.
Many businesses are just beginning to feel the impact of the strike. They weren't worried in the first few hours, but now they are looking at their inventories and wondering how long they can hold out. The Ringling Brothers Circus is wondering how long it can hold out in Lafayette, Louisiana. The circus train should have been in Mississippi by today, but for now, the show cannot go on. Tom Foreman, ABC News, Denver.
And then, of course, there are the Stewarts, the folks we've been following for the last 2 nights as they tried to get from Missouri to Las Vegas. Now we know why they were so anxious to get there, which they did by bus. Mrs. Stewart says the trip was a nightmare, and now she's worried how they're going to get home. Other news today, the government has revised its estimate of how the overall economy performed during the first 3 months of the year, a little better than first thought, up 2.7% instead of 2.4%, which does not automatically translate into jobs. Last week, the number of Americans filing new claims for unemployment benefits went up to its highest level since the beginning of May. And those figures on jobs did not sit well on Wall Street. The Dow Jones Industrials lost 6.5 points today to close at 3284, and the trading was moderate. The National Commission on AIDS said today that the Bush administration's efforts to fight AIDS have been tragically insufficient. The commission, which is the government's main advisory panel on AIDS, has concluded that President Bush is simply not prepared to take any significant new action. Here's ABC's Bettina Gregory.
When basketball star Magic Johnson joined the AIDS Commission last January and lobbied the president for more resources, commission members seemed optimistic. But today the AIDS Commission blasted Mr. Bush for saying no to all of its recommendations. No to more federal funding to provide care for AIDS patients. No to more drug treatment and clean needles for drug abusers. And no to a 20% increase in money for research and education.
The administration's response has been, I think we said, woefully inadequate.
Their statement is inaccurate, it's unfair, it's a distortion, and it's a disservice to the American people.
Sullivan says the administration spends more money on AIDS than any other infectious disease. But today his department issued a report citing AIDS as a third leading cause of death for those aged 25 to 44, surpassing even heart disease. Bettina Gregory, ABC News, Washington.
The chief prosecutor investigating the Iran-Contra scandal, says he's not through yet. A week after the former Secretary of Defense Caspar Weinberger was indicted, Lawrence Walsh says there will be further indictments this summer. He says he wants to determine whether officials at the highest level of government sought to obstruct the investigation. When we come back, public money for private schools, the debate over President Bush's latest program on education.
If you want to paint like a professional painter, you need to develop all 5 senses. Your sense of color, your sense of balance, your sense of pride and craftsmanship, and most importantly, your sense of direction. There's only one paint this good, and there's only one place you can get it. The pros know. Ask Sherwin-Williams.
This castle once had 26 bathrooms.
It'd be nice if one of them still worked.
Why?
What if my diarrhea comes back?
Relax. You took my Imodium AD caplets.
Just once. I usually take the pink stuff 2 or 3 times.
Imodium AD is much better.
Imodium AD caplets are so effective, they often work in one dose, instead of dose after dose after dose, like the pink stuff.
Ready to go?
Before the sunset?
Imodium AD for diarrhea, the choice for one-dose relief.
To survive out here, you need a rifle, a friend like Elvis here, and of course, Domino's Pizza.
It's our 99-cent carry-out special. With any regular price pizza, get a one-topping medium for 99 cents.
Nobody knows like Domino's, right, Elvis?
How you like pizza at home?
You make me feel so young.
Promise Extra Light Spread. Half the saturated fat and calories of margarine and a taste you'll enjoy with all your heart.
You make me feel so young.
Now Promise Extra Light in sticks. Get heart smart.
President Bush put education at the top of his public agenda today, invoking memories of World War II when the GI Bill gave returning veterans money to attend college. Mr. Bush announced what he called a GI Bill for children. His critics say it's actually a warmed-over idea involving vouchers, which would let public money go to private schools. Here's our education correspondent, Bill Blakemore.
A carefully produced White House morning gave high visibility to the president's proposal. In a South Lawn ceremony, he announced his bill would distribute $500 million federal dollars to state and local governments which in turn would give $1,000 scholarships to low and middle-income families. They could use the money to help send a child to any school, private or religious, or if they choose a public school, the money would be divided between that school and supplemental services like tutoring.
It is time we began thinking of a system of public education in which many providers offer a marketplace of opportunities.
The administration argues that if public schools have to compete with private schools for public dollars, they'll improve.
What we want to show over 4 years is what happens when middle and low income families have the same choices of schools that wealthy families already have.
Critics charge the lowest income families would not be helped.
If you're middle class, even marginal middle class, you could use $1,000 as a subsidy, add on more money of your own and send your kids to prep school. But if you're the poorest of the poor, $1,000 is worth nothing.
Some parochial elementary schools cost around $1,000, but that raises questions about church-state separation. And many question if this bill isn't just an election year effort to consolidate conservative support.
It's a repackaging of a political idea. It's an idea that has gone before Congress in the past and has failed.
In January, a similar White House proposal was defeated in the Senate 57-36. Whatever the political fate of this bill, it is part of a growing national fight over what the term public education should mean, whether it can rightly include schools which are not run by the government. Bill Blakemore, ABC News.
In other news today, Japanese scientists report that the ozone layer around the Earth is vanishing at a record pace. Ozone in the upper atmosphere absorbs harmful rays from the sun. Chlorofluorocarbons from refrigerators and air conditioners contribute to its breakdown. And the Japanese researchers say that the ozone is being destroyed 4 times faster than it was just 10 years ago. The space shuttle Columbia is up again. It is intended to be the longest shuttle flight ever. 13 days in space as opposed to the previous record of 11 days. For that extra time, NASA spent $120 million extra on adaptations. More fuel tanks, for example, and expanded toilet facilities. We'll be back in just a moment.
In our universe, there is always the unknown, the unpredictable. All we can do is prepare for it.
AT&T is now installing FastStar. It can detect a cable cut instantly, so 800 calls can get back in minutes instead of hours.
We can send wireless for any occasion, anywhere, but only if our 800 service is up and running. Our 800 service isn't just a phone line, it's a lifeline.
I miss you.
AT&T has the most reliable 800 service, period.
AT&T. Call us.
With Oscar Mayer Light Bologna, you won't miss any of that great bologna taste. Or any of that great bologna fun. Because the only thing missing is 1/3 the fat. Which you'll never really miss at all. Ready? Oscar Mayer Light Bologna. Nothing but the best.
Fasten your seatbelts! The sky's the limit! At Color Tiles Coast to Coast July 4th Price Buster! Up to 50% off every square foot of vinyl and ceramic floor and wall tile. DuPont Stainmaster Carpet, $11.99 installed. All wood floors up to 50% off. Wall covering, $2.99 a roll. Mini blinds, buy one, get 3 free. Nobody beats up to 50% off every ceramic. And vinyl tile. And color carpets. Fly in now. Color Tiles Coast to Coast July 4th Price Buster. Ends Sunday.
Quote, a mid-sized Dodge Dakota with a new optional 230 horsepower Magnum V8 outpowers, outhauls, and just plain outpulls even full-size 5-liter V8s from Ford and Chevy. Unquote. Dodge, the most powerful line of trucks anywhere. Get $750 cash back on Dakota during the Dodge Dare to Compare Challenge.
International news, a view of the destruction in Sarajevo today from the political cartoonist Danziger. On this spot, reads that sign on a Sarajevo street, the peace-loving nations of the world did nothing. Nothing is a slight exaggeration. The United Nations has a trade embargo in place against Serbia, whose forces have been pounding away at the civilian population of Sarajevo for 2 months. The question is, will the U.S. and its allies do any more? Here's ABC's Barry Dunsmore.
In reacting to the siege of Sarajevo, the U.S. easily escalated its rhetoric, describing the Serbian attacks as outrageous and barbaric. But it has so far been unwilling to move beyond words to action. Now, that may be changing. On Monday, National Security Advisor General Brent Scowcroft suggested that if the Yugoslav civil war is allowed to spread, it could threaten the security of Europe and the U.S. itself. On Tuesday, Secretary of State Baker indicated the U.S. might join a multinational military effort to bring relief supplies into Sarajevo even without a ceasefire.
We will consult and coordinate with others on additional steps to be taken, including steps that would ensure that the relief operation is no longer blocked in Sarajevo.
Baker has said privately he is thinking about a UN operation with U.S. transport planes flying in relief supplies and American fighter planes providing protection for the transports. The Europeans are not enthusiastic, and the U.S. military has cautioned that even such limited steps could drag the U.S. into a quagmire like Beirut. President Bush remains undecided about using force. He knows there are few votes in putting American servicemen at risk in what used to be Yugoslavia. Still, as one official put it, this administration is moving reluctantly towards some form of military involvement there. But given what the U.S. itself calls the barbaric behavior of the Serbs, will outside help come soon enough? Barry Dunsmore, ABC News, the State Department.
Still overseas, off the coast of southwest England today, a fishing dispute between British and French fishermen has turned nasty. The British say their nets were intentionally cut by the men on board a French trawler. The French have not denied it. The British Navy has sent one of its ships to patrol the area. We have a report from Germany tonight that speaks to the difficulty of crafting a united nation from two parts which had been so unequal since the end of World War II. When East and West Germany were reunited nearly 2 years ago, their separate laws on abortion were so thoroughly incompatible that only now are they even close to finding common ground. Tonight, the German parliament has approved a compromise. ABC's Jerry King is in Berlin.
It is one of the few times the East Germans have won. The compromise is not the abortion on demand they've had, but it's not as restrictive as the law in West Germany, one of the toughest in the world. Abortion there has been a crime, except after rape or on life-threatening medical grounds. Magdalena Fiederlin had an abortion because she could not afford another child. She's one of hundreds of West German women taken to court and convicted. 5 years later, her appeal is still pending.
When I myself find the reasons and say, no, I don't have the child born, but I have an abortion, I'm a criminal.
The law will make abortion in the first trimester legal across Germany. That horrifies many Western Germans who are more conservative than their Eastern relatives. It's particularly upsetting for the West German Roman Catholics.
You are allowed, within a deadline of so many weeks, to kill the unborn child. A license to kill.
Ich möchte nicht in einem Staat leben.
I don't want to live in a state that allows abortion and organizes it.
The law also says women wanting an abortion must first go through an obligatory session of counseling, and that angers many East Germans, for whom abortion was so easy it was almost a form of birth control.
So günstig eher für die Frauen aus dem West. As good as it may be for women in the West, for us the compromise is a massive step backward.
Since the German Constitution specifically protects the right to life, eventually the abortion issue will end up in the Supreme Court. Here, too, the passage of the law will not be the end of the debate. Jerry King, ABC News, Berlin.
When we come back, something you absolutely should not try at home.
5-day week, 8-hour day, paid sick leave, higher wages, health insurance, overtime pay, pensions, safer working conditions, paid holidays, job security, paid vacations, maternity leave. The proceeding has been brought to you by the men and women of the unions of the AFL-CIO who won these benefits at the bargaining table and set the standard for all working Americans.
You may have heard recent allegations concerning Sears auto centers in California and New Jersey. I want you to know that we take such charges very seriously. because they strike at the core of our company, our reputation for integrity. Sears Auto Center customer satisfaction rate is among the industry's highest. But after an extensive review and painful soul-searching, we've concluded that our incentive compensation and goal-setting systems may have created an environment in which mistakes have occurred. To guard against such things happening, we've eliminated incentive compensation for the folks who recommend auto repairs, and we've changed their role to that of customer service advisor, and we'll reward them for keeping you satisfied. When this critical issue of trust is at stake, we feel we can't merely react. We must overreact. We're totally committed to maintaining your confidence. You have my word on it.
The scandal rocking the Navy. ABC News continues its report of shocking sexual attacks allegedly by the Navy's top guns.
I thought for sure we were going to be gang raped.
Sam Donaldson behind the scenes tells the full story. Prime time tonight.
Finally, from us this evening, this was not my idea. And those of you who have a thing about snakes may want to go and get a cup of coffee. We may join you. Here's ABC's Al Dale.
Cassandra Luchak is a fairly typical co-ed at Sam Houston State University.
That same notion.
She is studying hard to be an elementary school teacher and works part-time to pay tuition. But that is where the typical part ends. On weekends, her job is to head for events like this Indian festival. Step right up, pay your $2, and watch her, along with Raymond and Steve, wrangle some deadly rattlesnakes, complete with fangs and venom. Cassandra got to know snakes while working at a petting zoo, but that was too boring.
Well, the first time I got in the pit, I shook like a leaf on a tree. I was kind of really scared. It's dangerous. You really have to know what you're doing.
That means learning to keep your distance and no sudden moves. Isn't there an easier way to get through college?
I'd rather do it than slapping hamburgers at McDonald's or something. I like challenges.
How about this challenge? Get the snake to break the balloon without getting bitten. This is the first time she's tried it.
Come on in. Come on. Come on. Cassandra has done more than 100 shows a year for 4 years, and in all that time, she's never been bitten.
Every time I get in there, I hope and pray that I don't. I don't think that I personally could handle the pain.
Most people couldn't handle this, sharing a sleeping bag with a tangle of rattlesnakes.
This is one handful.
Her job is to get out in one piece.
The first time I did it, I crawled out of the bag, and I stood up, and I looked at Steve, and I said, I want to do that again.
She made it out fine this time, too, but with one minor complication.
I've been on the outside of the pit walls, looking in thinking, God, they're crazy. You know?
And then there you are.
Uh-huh.
And you're not crazy.
No.
Even after she becomes a teacher, Cassandra plans to keep on handling snakes. Show and tell time should be interesting. Al Dale, ABC News, Elton, Louisiana.
That's our report on World News Tonight. I'm Peter Jennings. Good night.
This has been a presentation of ABC News. More Americans get their news from ABC News than from any other source.
Anything can happen when the commission-thon continues. Thursday, Tony puts together the pieces of a 35-year-old mystery.
I saw the boy that killed my brother.
A priest is a murderer? The commission-thon continues Thursday.
Kids come in all sizes and shapes, and different kids need different beds. For the best selection, come to
Kids Bed!
At Kids Beds, this all-wood bunk bed is just $99.99.
All right.
Or this tubular bunk bed with double-sized bottom bunk is $195.99.
Wow.
Plus, day beds start at just $45.99.
Cool.
For the best prices and biggest selection of beds for every kid, it's
Kids Bed!
Kids Beds, 3715 Merle Hay Road at Douglas, next to Big Sur.
Amazing Blue Star ointment stops itching fast. Jock itch, ringworm, tetter, relieves athlete's foot. Blue Star ointment, the one that's guaranteed. Ask for it.
Can you find the drug pusher in this picture? It's hard to believe kids this young are at risk because someone their age may be offering